and may approve, modify, create, or deny a resolution and or letter on the matter. And I provided here this morning, I had Suzanne print out a letter on this issue, and this is more along the lines of it's cross between a letter and a resolution. There's there's some points to it, but I think these are the questions that the commission is asking about the Pickens Horse Monument. Suzanne was handing us out first thing this morning.
I handed it out earlier, but the copies I put back there might be gone already. Do you need more?
We will know if we do shortly. Yep, all right. And do you have a copy of this? Did you guys have a copy of it?
I don't have it.
All right, we could have an extra copy for, so you guys discussed at your meeting the Pickens?
Yes, we did. We discussed the Pickens deal, and some of it's already been brought up. Somebody mentioned about the commercial water rights, and I would agree. I talked to Dave Sticks, who owns a feedlot in Fernley and in Lovelock, and he is under a commercial water right, so they could transfer some of that stuff. But there's some real stumbling blocks for Mrs. Pickens as far as you cannot have two separate herds. You know, I mean, one is she's taking custody of them. They're no longer free roaming. They've already been through a brand inspection, been branded with the marks on them, and then she wants to intermingle them with an actual free roaming herd. Still have to maintain thriving ecological balance. The Taylor Grazing Act would have to be amended. The 1971 Wild Horse and Burro Act would have to be amended. The DeMar Dahl's one of the commissioners that strongly opposes it. There's a lot of things with their natural resource plan that, as long as their natural resource plan is for the county, is compatible with federal law. A lot of this is going to come down to the governor, who I believe we have a meeting with on the 8th or something, 8th or 9th. So the new upcoming governor. So we're definitely moving in the right direction on some of this stuff.
So everybody knows, this basically is in the form of a resolution, although it would require an additional header. But there are a list of 13 questions, and these are things that have come up and appear to be the items that my impression that the commission was asking about these items, and that each one of these questions, and it says these include but not limited to. These questions must be answered about that proposal. That they can't be answered from what we know right now, and we really need to have these questions answered. And I don't know that each commissioner has all of these, but I think this is fairly inclusive. Also, at the bottom, and there's a few statements in there about it, and then at the bottom, the last 9 points. Consequently, Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners must oppose this form of wild horse sanctuary until such time as all the wildlife resource concerns are resolved, including. And then you got those 9 points. And it's an including statement. There probably are a few more things, but if there's items on there that it should not include, we should definitely take, if we do want to take action on this, we could strike some of them or add some to it. But this is something that's coming up hard, fast, and now. And hopefully, I don't know if we need a chance to sit here and read it for a minute. We're making some more copies right now. So they're gonna waiting on the copies. What?
Could we just take a lunch break while everybody reads it?
What we could do is we could take lawyers are really intelligent people, and sometimes they have really good ideas. What we could do is we could take a break, a lunch break, and be back. How long we need? 45 minutes for lunch?
Make it 2 o'clock.
Okay, make it 2 o'clock. We'll be back at 2 o'clock, and everybody has a chance to look at this. If you don't have a copy, staff is making you some. Take the lunch. Enjoy.
Thank you, kind sir.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
30 minutes.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. First thing we can do is we're going to finish up this item, and then I'm informed that Mr. Maxim kind of needs to get somewhere, so if we could maybe have a motion to suspend the rules, move 23 behind 24 A and B. After that, I would appreciate it.
So moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to move item 23 into the slot between item 24B and 24C. Does everybody understand the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Vogler is absent, as he will be, I believe, through the rest of the meeting. All right, 16. We have this proposal here. Did everybody get a chance to read it? Had a nice hour to read it over. What do we think?
Kind of.
And this is an action item. We'll go with public comment this time, then we'll bring it back to the commission. Public comment. Public comment. We're on 16B. Go ahead, please.
I'll start this ball rolling here. Willis Lamb, Lyon County. Didn't expect to come up so soon. If you'll allow me to take my jacket off. I've been involved in working with BLM, some would call it hand-to-hand combat, since about 1992. Last year, I was requested by Bob Abbey to participate in some discussions that included such things as the Pickens proposals. In fact, I was at a meeting with Jerry Tipton, who's she's the vice chair of the Mineral County Commission and a rancher. Some people from some national animal organizations, and Madeline Pickens and her staff. I have to say, when I first, having the years of experience that I've had involved with BLM, wild horses, and so forth, anytime somebody comes out with a grandiose plan to come up with a mega horse sanctuary, usually my eyes roll back in my head, and at the beginning this was no exception. My initial impression was that this is, idealistic and naive. However, as questions were brought forward and to the Pickens group and answers were provided, it appeared that over time that she is trying to develop some sort of a rational model. Now, it's not to say that there still aren't many questions that need to be asked and answers that need to be provided. But without reciting a bunch of instances, there were issues brought forward by people from this state, and for the most part, her answers were very responsible and respectful of our, or I should say, sympathetic isn't the right word, but she understood our needs and was trying to make her model fit so that it wasn't going to be detrimental. Understanding that also in conversations with Senator Reed, this is something he and some other people are interested in seeing happen. We've got, last count, 535 members in Congress between the Senate and the House. We have 5 coming from Nevada. And if you take out Reed, Shelley Barkley, and Senator Ensign, we got 2 people that may want to stand up in opposition to this. So aside from the money and aside from the politics, this is likely to happen. There are other projects that are under discussion or under planning by a couple of other groups that are somewhat similar. My concern here and my advice is that Mrs. Pickens has the ability to probably put the best model together, and that model is going to be reflective of what we're going to see some of the other groups do on other private lands. Obviously, there's a lot of issues here. My advice is that this board think about how this letter is worded. The questions need to be asked. Make it more of an invitation.
Thank you.
Just the 10-second.
Candido, and then over here.
Candido Mendy, Velco Cab. Well, being as it looks like this will be in our backyard, We opposed it, and you got a 3-page resolution yesterday from us about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Darrell Harwell with Washoe County. At our county advisory board, we want to go ahead and give the commission permission to the State Department of Fish and Game to get the business plans, to find out everything about this, and then bring it back to the CAB so we can make an adjustment or opinion on what's happening. I mean, my one question that we were always talking about, when you're looking at 60,000 acres or 600,000 acres and a small portion is private, I mean, what she wants to do on private land, we're not going to argue. But a lot of it is BLM, which is public land, and that's, I mean, how's she going to close that off? So please write a letter, find out more information. I mean, these are just questions. Let's make it official and find out.
Paul Dixon, Clark County Cab. I won't repeat anything Darrell said because I agree with it. But I think one of the things that I've read, at least in some of the Madeline Pickens literature and blog stuff that she has out there, is that she's trying to sequester a total of 1 million acres. And when you hit 1 million acres, whether it's public or private, she can quantify that as a monument, and that gives it a whole different status. And that's how she gets to using our public lands, is by calling it a monument and getting to 1 million acre size. She actually has monument status, is my understanding. And that gives her ability to do almost anything on that land because it's under monument status, and we as sportsmen in Nevada can't do that. So part of it is figuring out how we restrict her from getting to the 1 million acres. The other part is learning more, which I agree with Darrell. We need a lot more information so that we can activate our public the way that we had the public activated in here with us, both on the Trail Safe petition and Black Bears today. And I think the sportsmen in Nevada will come out in droves for this. They aren't just going to tell their cabs. They're going to attend these meetings and let you guys know that you have that support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment on this issue? Mr. Corner.
For the record, George Corner representing myself on this issue. We've been assured up in Elko County by the BLM district manager that the environmental assessment's only the first step, and they anticipate that they're going to go to an environmental impact statement, which is the only way a lot of these questions are ever going to be answered, asked or answered. My concerns as sportsmen, manifold. We've established a good elk herd in there. There's antelope. It is a major wintering area. You know, you're talking about the migration corridors from areas 8 and 7 all come down through the Pequops and all in Spruce Mountain. It's a major wintering area. If this is turned into a big, huge Mustang reserve, doesn't matter who has the water rights, the wild horses are going to have the water rights. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Henry Krinka. I'm speaking for myself. I live in Ruby Valley and have all my life. My great-grandfather homesteaded there in the 1870s. So my family has seen a lot of change in that area. And I'm old enough that when we had a ranch that had horses on it, we could still run them. And some of the ideas that she has on this, there's just no way you can run her horses with the wild horses and expect to maintain them and move them when they need moved. The only way she can do this that I can see would be to fence everything off with a fence that'll hold a wild horse. And in doing so, you will be keeping out all the wildlife. Nothing's going to be going through that fence. And also, she's going to be fencing off water that is there for the wildlife now. And, you know, the horses, they just gang up on these springs, and they do keep the wildlife out. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Brief?
Sure.
You know, included a bunch of these things, hopefully, in this, and just like, for instance, to address your last ones there. To what standards will an effective barrier be constructed so as to prevent feral stallions outside the sanctuary from entering and mating with non-breeding mares within the sanctuary? What will the effects of this barrier be on wildlife? I mean, there's a lot of things here that I think are mirroring what a lot of the audience is saying. Did you get a chance to glance through this? I mean, were most of your questions asked here, or do you have any questions that were not in here?
I haven't. I didn't go through it with the real close. No.
Okay. I mean, a lot of those questions, they're in here. Go ahead.
For the record, Mike Laughlin, I attended the commission meeting, the request of the commissioners in Alpha when Miss Pickens was there and her husband, Boone Pickens. And the thing that came away from that meeting that I really thought was interesting was that T. Boone Pickens got up, her husband, and told about all the water they owned in various states. He may be one of the largest owner of water in the United States. And he never once mentioned horses. And I thought this was kind of strange because it was a horse meeting, but all he talked about was the water. So consequently, then you get to thinking, well, what are they going to do with this water? Well, it's not that far to the end of that pipeline that goes to Vegas out of that Ely County, as most of you know. And that thought kind of crossed my mind. And then the question came up, how are we going to separate these horses? Well, I know a little bit about wild horses. I've been around them all my life. And if you build a fence and you put these studs on one side and you have the studs on the other side, I don't care how big a fence you are, these studs are going to get hung up in the fence, tear the fence down, and pretty soon they're going to all be intermingled. So I really think that this whole concept of this wild horse preserve, look at what happened in the Pryor Mountains south of Billings, Montana, years ago. They created a preserve called the Pryor Mountain Preserve, and I was there. And they fenced it. Well, the horses ate up everything but the steel fence posts. They finally had to come and gather them and take them out of there. There was nothing left. This idea of fencing wild horses doesn't work. I don't think it worked anywhere, Montana or Nevada. That country that she bought, I know really well. I used to fly it probably on a daily or weekly basis when Lloyd Sorensen ran his sheep there. That's a shad scale winter sheep range. It's a tough country on that Dolly Varden Flat. It's not a fertile country that runs lots of AUMs of livestock. So I'm not sure. I came away from the feeling that, you know, there was more things here. She wants to be paid $500 for the horse. If she was so interested in these horses, why don't she go ahead and adopt them? She doesn't want to adopt them. So there's a whole scam here that's never really come out on how this thing will work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead. Mr. Pearl?
Mike?
Hey, Mike.
Yes. Sure.
Yes. They would basically have to fence off, because you not only have the coming down the Pequops, you have them coming down the west side of the of the Ruby Range, coming down to Harrison Pass and across to Spruce Mountain too.
Yeah, well, it lays on the other side, on the east side of the highway going to Ely.
Right. So, but you have them.
Yeah, you'd have to. Yeah,
from both
exactly.
ways.
Right. And I think there's a right-of-way fence there along the highway now.
And I guess the real question is, what's going to, if you have to, if it were to be fenced, would it be fenced in such a way as to cut off wildlife from getting to water sources?
Well, I don't know how you fence studs out. I don't understand that. You'd have to build a perimeter fence or a division fence. Anybody's been around studs, I mean, they're going to tear something down. They're going to try and get at the stud across the fence. And so if you're going to build a stud-proof fence, I'll guarantee you that wildlife is going to have a hell of a time getting through the fence, if that's the question you're asking. Okay?
All right. Any further public comment? Seeing none, close public comment period. Bring this back to the commission. What do we want to do with this? Everybody get a chance to glance over it at lunch. Hopefully most of the questions, I mean, I'm looking at it. I heard questions in the audience here. I heard things about environmental impact statement. That's covered in item 12 on the questions. And once again in item 9 on the last section. The thing about fencing came up. That's covered under item 7 on the questions, at least in some format? Is there any questions that are not asked on this that need to be answered? Or are there any things that need to be done that aren't listed in those 9 things?
What do we, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, if we're talking about making a resolution out of this, yes.
Mr. Chairman, it's my opinion that we should totally oppose this from its entirety. Oppose this Pickens proposition to build a monument there. If whatever she wants to do with her 1,000 acres that she bought that's private land, you know, nobody can say anything about that, I don't think. But as far as the rest of it, we got to oppose it 100%. And send the appropriate letter to whoever.
Okay, and this, I believe, is an attempt at coming up with a resolution on the matter. If there's some better wording, we could also write additional documents if you want to throw this out as a beginning document. Because it basically, I mean, as far as I'm reading it is, you know, let's see, where is it? Must oppose this form of wild horse sanctuary until such a time as, then you go through all those 9 things. That's at least today. When we get them answered, then we can see where we're at. And once you get, I mean, these are some serious things. Go ahead, Mr. Crump.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I've been interrupting him. I'm sorry.
In my opinion, doesn't matter if they
Doesn't matter.
You know, these some of these questions or don't answer them. We need to oppose this in its entirety, except for her private 1,000 acres that she bought. She can do whatever she wants with that, but she can fence the whole thing and put it 20 feet high for all I care. But the rest of that, no.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what you're getting at here, though, is trying to come up with a thoughtful list of things that essentially amount to almost major roadblocks to doing that. And if not, at least if whether it's Madeline Pickens or anybody else, if they were able to get through this gauntlet here, perhaps maybe it wouldn't be such a bad project. But in looking through these questions and the environmental impact statement provisions and the like, I don't see how that project could get through this test. So perhaps we ought to think about it as a resolution.
So what I'm looking at here is basically, if these items are covered, then maybe wildlife won't be impacted so badly after all, if all of these items are covered. And maybe we didn't have all the items. That's one reason it's here for the commission. Maybe we're missing some items. We have some, sorry.
One suggestion, wherever you've got feral, you probably need to change that to wild, because feral has a legal definition and wild horses have a legal definition. And if you're talking about feral horses, I doubt she's going to put any feral horses in there under the current legal definition. So that'd be my suggestion.
Okay. Would it be both? Which should be inclusive, or just the one?
Well, legally, the feral horses belong to the state, and the wild horses are managed by the federal government. So, because of the legal definition, you need to use wild horses, because she's not going to have any feral horses.
Gotcha.
I agree.
Okay. That's why we have lawyers involved. Yes.
Does anybody know what she paid for this 1,000 acres?
I'd heard
2.5.
2.5. I know her old man's got a lot of money. I can't believe he'd give her 2.5 million without having some background that he's going to be able to somehow get this on.
Did we? That went over.
Pocket change to him.
That was gone over the committee somewhat.
I think the nature of buying that block of private ground comes with the appurtenant private property, which are the water rights and the rights of ways and the easements that extend throughout 1 million acres we're talking about.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. The 1,000 acres that's private You know, that's one thing. With all the AUMs and everything that goes with it, that's something else. That we could possibly stop.
It's water rights.
Okay, anybody else have anything on this? Mr. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see a great start here. I think everything is you've covered a lot of ground. I think we can probably improve it if we just spend a little more time on it. And I don't know if we could I'll send you comments and you maybe could integrate them and bring them back to us so that we're not.
You know, if I had a preference on the matter, it would be approve it with a few modifications, come back and modify it at a later date if things need done. And that might very well be February. We can always, if we make a resolution, because I'm thinking we need a stand on this issue. Even if it's, I mean, this is not a, I don't think it's proposed, it's not citing legal cases. I don't think necessarily that we're not citing a statute that needs to be reviewed. It's a philosophical stand, and those items that, if it is close, substantially close, is it close enough for now? Do we need a document? Do we need to have a stand on this issue at this point in time? Is this close enough? And then we go back and amend this, or at the next meeting, following meeting, we could send, we could ask the commission to come, or the committee. I just hate to have it go, you know, on and on and on, as opposed to, and still having no stand on the issue.
Is this going to go to Madeline Pickens or to the BLM, or who is this proposed, or is it just going to be our position?
It would be our position, and it would go to anybody you'd like it to go to. And there will be a forward button on your computer, and you can just, you know, this is a resolution of the commission. Send it out.
So if we oppose it, we send a letter to Salazar. We send a letter to, he's the main guy. You don't have to send it to nobody else after you send it to him. He's the BLM, he's agriculture, he's everything.
No, agriculture is a separate department.
Yep. Mr. McBeth.
I guess my position on this, first of all, I very much think that the commission needs to do something with regard to this proposed wild horse sanctuary. But as with the letter on the water rights, I would really like a little bit of time to digest all this, and so I would hope that we'd maybe just do exactly what we did with the other letter and we push it off till February.
Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to reiterate the same thing. I wish we could have this stuff a little farther in advance, where we could have time to sit down and look at it. Because to sit down and read it over a lunch and try and say, well, does this cover everything that I'm thinking right at this moment? That's pretty difficult. And I'm sure if I just got it, the cabs could have something to add to this. I'm sure this isn't a complete list. It may be complete as far as some people are, but others may come up with other items that should be included. And that's kind of where I feel like we need to have a little more time to look at it effectively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Motions on the matter?
Chairman.
Go ahead. Mr. Pearl? Good.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt a resolution with the wording that's within the proposal as we've been looking at, and to change feral to wild wherever it appears, that it be on the agenda for review in the February meeting, but that this should be done, frankly, as soon as possible.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded to adopt this resolution and bring it back as it is with change in from wild to feral, and bring it back, excuse me, to from feral to wild, as stated by Mr. Capurro, and then bring it back on the agenda as well for the February meeting. Yes.
Just a point of clarification. When you say adopt it,
as a resolution.
Adopt it as a resolution now, we're adopting it now? And then, I'm not sure I quite understand, if we're approving it now, before we've had a chance to have all the input, it would seem to me to make more sense to go ahead and make the change and get this distributed out for comment, and then have the adoption of the document occur at the February meeting.
My purpose is to make the, Mr. Chairman, my purpose for making that a motion was to, this would allow us to review the resolution in the interim, bring it back on for another review in the February meeting, and change it at that time if we wish.
And in the meantime, there would be some position statement out there. All right. Everybody understand the motion second? Do you understand it?
No,
okay.
Sorry. I guess when we use the word adopt, that means that it becomes an official act, and that the commission has basically agreed that this is our position. And my point is that without additional time to look at this, I'm not going to be able to do that at this point in time. I can agree to make the change to the letter with the understanding that it's going out to the cabs, to everybody for comment and possible revision, that we then come back to the February meeting and vote on it at that time. I can do that, but I can't do an approval of a document that I have had insufficient time to really digest.
Okay. Did you understand the motion?
I guess I do.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Motion fails. Mr. Pearl, Mr. Lent in favor. Other 5 opposed. Ready for a new motion. Mr. Howell? No. And if that doesn't make it, we'll...
Because of the way this is written, I don't believe I'm going to be able to make the motion that I want to make. What I would like to do is make a motion that we go ahead and send a letter to Salazar saying that we oppose this Pickens Horse Monument. Period. That's coming from the Wildlife Commission. We oppose it. Now, if we want to discuss this further at another time, that's a different matter. Can I make that motion that we send a letter to Salazar saying that this commission at this moment opposes this monument?
If we have some wording for it, we could make that motion could be made.
Make that motion.
So there is.
As soon as they give you the intent, you could draft the letter.
Okay.
So you'd need to probably include in the motion who's going to draft it.
And who would draft it?
I beg your pardon?
And who would draft that? Who would draft that letter? It should be included as part. It should be included as part of the motion. I was.
Well, I would think the staff would write it. That we oppose this this monument.
Okay.
Staff can write it.
Based on what?
See, I'm looking for a second. Don't see a second. Okay. It has been properly moved and seconded to request that staff write a letter? A letter to Secretary Salazar stating that the Wildlife Commission opposes the creation of the proposal of the sanctuary for free and wild roaming horses in Nevada.
Sorry, but
Is that
one more
correct?
question, just to make sure the motion's clear enough to pass muster. Do you want the chairman to sign that letter once staff drafts it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you want to include that in the motion? Is that
And the chairman
acceptable?
and the chairman will have to sign that letter.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody, okay, we got question,
Okay,
comment.
so we're gonna have staff in now put together the letter.
A letter opposing this monument.
Based on the public,
Same
the
thing
public
Elko
land
County
issue?
Commission did.
Based upon the Elko resolution.
Well, it wasn't based, we didn't have any instruction to that effect. If you'd like to.
But I'm saying, it's just the same thing they did. The more bodies, legal bodies, that send him a letter, I think is important.
Okay. Mr. Lent.
Will that water down the effect of ever getting answers to these questions then, once we write a letter? And how can we write a letter back asking all these questions then when we've already opposed it?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Most of the items you list here, and once again, I only gave it a cursory review, but most of the items you've listed here will come out in an EA or EIS process. So I think that's the kind of response you would hear back from them, is that we appreciate your concern, and it's probably more weighted if you choose to go on record as being opposed to the concept in general or whatever. So
That's what the motion is.
And that's what the current motion is. Does everybody understand the motion? Should we ask Mr. Howell to restate? Or are we clear?
I think it's been amended so many times, you're gonna need to start over.
Okay. Can we start over just for the point of clarification? And then we'll make sure the second agrees with that it was right.
I move that the commission instruct staff to write a letter to Secretary Salazar stating the fact that the Wildlife Commission of the state of Nevada is opposed to the Pickens Horse Monument. And it needs to be signed by the chairman.
Okay. Is that okay with second? Okay, so that was the motion that's on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. All right, now we are moving on with 24A. Progress and funding on Phase 1 independent scientific data